let's discuss presentations and how to present them. So in this module, I've included lecture notes, I've included articles, I've included a nice video on how to present something. It's a lot of information packed in a small module. But one thing that I want to go over is steps to take. So again, you need to brainstorm, and I've stressed this every single time that you've had an assignment from me, no matter how big or how small. When you work on a project, you have to brainstorm. So all the steps below, follow through. It's the last time I'll be able to talk about them this semester, but this is something that you should do every single time you decide to work on a project. Whether it is at school, at work, for foundation, for community committee, whatever it may be, make sure that you brainstorm ideas and how to roll them out. So knowing that you can't put everything in the proposal in your presentation, because again, you have a lot of information in there and you only have 5 minutes to present your case to me, you need to evaluate your rhetorical situation. Has it changed? Now, is a presentation a little bit different than a proposal? There are 2 different techniques that you use to work with them. So what exactly is the purpose at this point? And has the audience changed? Now, when you think about change, are there any constraints? Will they be able to view your presentation? Maybe they don't have a computer, or they don't have a computer working, or when you give a live presentation, there's a calendar problem that they've had another meeting scheduled. So think about your audience and what constraints they may be. Do they need any special assistance when they're listening to a presentation? So again, some of this changes slightly with presentation versus and researching. Hopefully you don't need to do any additional researching, but it is acceptable to add more into a presentation. Make sure it's clear and that you let your audience know that you have added it. Organizing, again, does not have to be organized the same exact way as your proposal. It should not be, really. It needs to make sense. So think about how you want to roll it out when you talk versus when it's read on paper. Again, does not need to follow the proposal outline at all. Developing strategies. What this means with a proposal versus a presentation is presentations are little text, more images, and then you have your notes that you read from. In those notes, what is there? Can you do simple bullets with phrases and then tell a story or describe or contrast? You're looking at before and after layout pictures. That's a compare contrast. Do you need to explain? Maybe you need classification if you're dealing with a science lab. Can you define terms for them? And then again, are you analyzing anything? So definitely you need more images than text, but I'm not going to go into that as the video in PowerPoints instead of creating presentations actually really gets into detail. So review. After you're done, you laid it out, give it to somebody and let them look at it. You don't have to use words or anything, but they can look at your slides. Then I would go ahead and do a recording and have them listen to the recording. Did you cover everything? Is everything working out? Then go back to the table and revise, edit, and proofread. That first rollout is not the one that you want to submit to me. You want to go back in and change it. Walk through, does it make sense? Is this professional looking, etc., etc. And then publish. Publish is any time you hit submit button, anytime you walk in front of somebody, anytime that it leaves you, it is published. So think about how you want to look at it as when it's actually leaving your hands and somebody else sees it. All right, again, this is the last time I get to cover all these topics and strategies of how to write something with you. Make sure you take this with you for the rest of your academic career and into the workplace where it needs to be in place. So I'm not going to go into design as much because, again, you're going to watch the video. There's all kinds of issues dealing with design, but I do want to cover the 5 principles of design. So back behind you, there's going to be your screen with your vision. You're going to have to look at how things are balanced, the alignment, the grouping, the consistency, and the contrast. In fact, the very first slide, PowerPoint presentation I'm getting ready to get into, I'll talk about the contrast and how it, when you put pictures on your slides, how does it draw a person into the screen or lead them away from it? Artists are really good with this contrast. So make sure you go through these notes and read through the rest of them. Obviously, I'm not going to get into a lot more of this. Let's go straight into the PowerPoint. So here is my presentation on given presentations, how to prepare for them. So in this, you've noticed there's a cow and a person. They're both behind podiums. The message is pretty clear. Are you the one that's going to go on and on and on, or are you the one that's going to hide and not want to do presentations? But look at where the 2 characters face. They're facing in. It draws your eye to the middle of the slide. That's what you want to look at. If they were face going out, then you would be more distracted. Public speaking is more important than ever. Again, we're going to cover more of this, but you will have to do public presentations at some point in front of other people, whether it's digitally on a computer or you're face-to-face with them. So how to plan for them. Planning and research, you really have this already because this is the proposal. Gave it to you, here it is. Now you have to organize your ideas again. And yes, you have to reorganize these ideas to fit in a presentation where it makes sense. Then choose a style. Create graphics in your slides. Again, now you're going back into the other part of the module where it talks about how to create stuff. And then, again, practice and rehearse. Really important topics. You always have to practice and rehearse your presentations. So formal presentations. Formal presentations, when you ask for money, that will always be formal. There's nothing about that. That is not formal. If I ask you for $20, you're like, oh, okay, here it is. If I ask you for $20,000, you're going to want to know where that money goes. So it becomes very formal. Informal, you're sitting around at a monthly meeting or even a weekly meeting, and you can discuss what you're going to do that week, to what your team is working on, to even if you have a new idea. You're usually sitting. You will never have to stand up, usually. Depends on the situation and what you're trying to do and who your audience is. But again, very informal compared to formal. You're behind a podium. You're talking in front of a group of people. You are usually standing for a formal presentation. So 5 W's and 1 H. Who's going to be in your audience? You need to know this. In fact, you need to know the demographics of who's going to be in your audience. What do they need? Where will you be presenting? Do you have a time, a date? Do you have a place? Do you know what's available in that place? You need to know why you're doing it to start with. And then how you should do it is, again, designing this PowerPoint. How you should always have a visual with your presentation for somebody to look at. That's not where I wanted to go. Okay. Sorry about that. How presentations fail. Believe it or not, I have that. And that's because you're not prepared. So think about what you need. Will you be behind a podium or not? Can you hide behind one? Will you be sitting at a table or standing out in the open? Do you need to move around? Is there going to be a microphone? How many people, again, are in your audience? Do you need to bring your own projector? Do you need to bring your own computer? Or what is available for technology? You need to find that out. If you need visual aids, if you need to make copies, can you get that done ahead of time so it's ready when you get ready to do your presentation? Do you need whiteboards? And while you're doing this and recording it, do you need a whiteboard in the back where you can write on it? Do you have the material to do that? Will your audience be eating or drinking? That's a big factor, and I can tell you from experience, if your audience eats and drinks, they're more relaxed. If they don't, obviously they're not. And then when will your audience need breaks? I'll go into that in a few more slides down about how to think about breaks and when to give your audience a much needed break. So prepare, prepare, prepare. Said it 3 times. Every time I say something 3 times, probably something to think about, but never go into a presentation without being prepared. Align your time. Now, again, I have a chart that's on the next slide. Make sure that you reach the time limit that you're allotted. So if you need to make a presentation in 10 to 15 minutes, should you go right in the middle of that 10 to 15 minutes, or should you hit 15 minutes? And again, the chart will help you out, but something that you need to think about when you're working through this and you do your sample runs, when do you stop talking? When do you allow for questions? So here's a table that is really good. Unfortunately, I don't have something that's for 5 minutes because your project is small enough that it can be within 5 minutes. But if you were to create your whole entire business, you're going to look at probably a 1-hour presentation to create your business, especially for investors. So you're going to need to spend a allotted amount of times. Well, 1 hour is a long time to stand up there and talk. Do you need a break in between? Usually somebody's time span lasts 45 minutes and then it's over. So you need to have that break somewhere at the 30-minute mark and cover the most important topics at the very end when you have their attention back. But make sure that you do a lot for some break because they mentally need a break, but so do you. You need to sit back and think about what you did the first half and what you need to stress the second half, because informal body language, that nonverbal body language that you see in your audience really will gear you to how you go about the next 30 minutes. So give yourself that break, give them a break. So presentation technologies. Again, all these vary depending on where you're going to give your presentation. My best advice to you is to find out. The more knowledge you have before you walk in the door, the better your presentation is going to be. Organizing your content. Remember, the more you say, the more they will forget. Now, my first run of doing this presentation video for you, it was 28 minutes. I don't want it 28 minutes, so I'm back to the drawing board. What can I cut out? What do I really need to tell you? I don't need 28 minutes worth of how to present something, though. So keep in mind, the more you say, the more they forget. Building the presentation. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them what you told them. This tell them deals with money. Tell them how much you need. In the middle, tell them again. And at the end, tell them again. You have to tell them that number. I need $23,000 to make this training facility a go. Then in the middle, this $23,000 consists of this, and you show them the budget. And then at the end, I really would like your approval to get $23,000 to start this training facility. As you know, work with it, but you need to be upfront with how much money you're asking for. It's not a mystery novel where you find out surprisingly at the end. Make sure that they know exactly how much, and you should tell them at least 3 times. So if you have to stand up in front of people to give a presentation, by all means, use your mobile phone or a tablet to put your notes on. It's highly acceptable at this point. People expect it. If you're doing it at your desk, make sure you have your notes written out in front of you, or they can still be on your tablet. But make sure you highlight exactly what you want to go through before you actually start your presentation. But your notes have to be somewhere. And then common patterns for public presentations. We do the first column, problem, needs, solution. You've heard me go through that quite a bit during the semester. And then methods, results, and discussion. Now, this is a method, these are the results, and what kind of recommendations. These are the recommendations I want to lay on the table for this. Preparing to answer questions. So you will have questions because that's why they're sitting around the table with a paper copy of your proposal and they're writing all over it. So most of the time your questions will be to elaborate or clarify, but make sure that you give a really solid answer. You restate some of your knowledge. You can go back into the power or to presentation and show them that slide so they could see it again, but be direct and to the point. If it's a hostile question, you can give the answer, but don't look at them. Look somewhere else in the room. And same with hecklers. Hecklers will try to sabotage your presentation, and they cause you to lose your cool. Don't let them do that. And they exist. I mean, there are bosses out there that will do it. They'll ask the same question 5 different ways. Don't let them get to you. Don't look at them. Stop answering questions and move forward. Choosing your presentation style depends on what you are presented and how you present it. But again, during COVID, there were the fun commercials where they were on Zoom and Zoom meetings and they weren't completely dressed. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure your background is not your home if you're doing this kind of presentation and sending in a YouTube video of it. Make sure that you have a blurred out background, or you have a different picture of a background, but it looks natural. So show enthusiasm. You really want this money. You should be enthusiastic about it, but keep it plain and keep it simple. Again, the more you say, the more they forget. Visual aids must have. Have to have visual aids, and you have to have very little text. You have help setting that up. Delivering the presentation. You can read this. They want to watch you perform. That's what you're doing. This is my own personal advice. I want you to be yourself. Don't be somebody else, because usually when you're somebody else, you fail. But you also need to be the person the audience expects. You are the subject matter person. You know what you're talking about. That's a person I want to see. But you still need to be you. Body language, again, here we go with how do you look when you're doing these presentations? Do you need to even have your face on the camera? But if you're face to face, you're not going to be able to get away with this. So you're going to have to stand up straight and drop your shoulders. Watch where your arms and your hands are. You should move around. I always tell people when you get up and do a presentation, move around because they follow you. They're not looking at their phone. They're following you. So obviously move around. If you're on a Zoom meeting, where are your hands? Are you jiggling in your seat? Are you rocking back and forth? Again, all distractions, and they happen. So keep that in mind when you're up for doing presentations. What are you doing? And this is why you need to practice. Okay. When you get nervous, you speak faster. That's what this whole slide's about. Speak slower. You know, people could have a very hard time understanding you if you speak very fast. And practice. Practice, do it again, practice, do it again. So that way you have it, and it sounds like you've rehearsed it. Another issue that you have to come up and talk about is, as soon as this slide pops up, is cultures within your audience. What if your person, one of the people sitting in your audience, English was not their first language? Or what if they don't speak English at all and they need a translator? My advice to you is to know the translator. Meet them beforehand. Again, that's doing your research, your due diligence before you walk in the door, knowing what's in the room, knowing what you're going to have to tackle. You cannot do any religious references, jokes at all. Handouts are great, and obviously when you work with a translator, which I have done several times, especially with deaf students, I stand where the translator can see me at all times because they're the ones that are translating into ASL. They need to also, sometimes they sit in front of that person, they sit beside that person, depending on if it's a language barrier. All this you need to know up front, but definitely that's why I say keep your stuff very plain, very simple, so that people all over can understand what you're asking. because not necessarily will you be able to research who is all in your audience 100% of the time. That's all I have for presentations. I wish you luck. If you have any questions, again, make sure that you send me a message so that I can address it. But 4 to 5 minutes, 5 minutes being the max for your presentation on this project. Good luck, and I look forward to watching them.